Who were you before your name was spoken, before a breath was drawn, before a body formed, before a clock ever started ticking? These are not poetic musings. They are the oldest questions the soul can ask. Every spiritual path worth anything begins here, with the crack in the illusion, the moment you realize you did not begin at birth. Something ancient stirred behind your eyes long before your lungs filled with air. Something eternal watches quietly through the mask you call a face. The modern world tells you otherwise. It says you are the product of DNA, neurons, and biological accidents, that you are born once and die once, and that's the end. But the ancient masters, those who walked deserts, sat beneath Bodhi trees, vanished into Himalayan caves, they knew a different truth. They did not guess. They remembered. They spoke of the soul not as a possession, but as a presence, not as something gained, but as something revealed. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, "There was never a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be." What does that mean for you? It means your soul predates time. It means you existed before the stars and will remain after the galaxies collapse. It means you are not inside time. Time is inside you. This isn't just ancient poetry, it's soul memory. So ask yourself, why do some things feel familiar the first time you see them? Why do you dream of places you've never been? Why do you meet someone and feel like you've known them for lifetimes? These are not glitches. They are fractures in the illusion, echoes of a consciousness that spans far beyond your current form. You didn't begin with this body. You began before beginning. The soul is not born, it descends. It emanates like light from the source, pure, radiant, formless, and takes shape through intention, not accident, not biology, not fate. You are here because you chose to be. You selected this body. You shaped this journey. Not as punishment, but as purpose. And that purpose is not to suffer, but to remember. But in order to remember, you had to forget. That was the price. Descent into matter means descent into density, into time, into illusion, into roles and names and wounds that would conceal your infinite nature. Birth, then, is not the beginning, it is the beginning of the forgetting. But now, through sacred curiosity, something in you is cracking open. A question has been asked that cannot be unasked. And from that question, remembrance begins, because the soul cannot be destroyed, it cannot be tainted, it cannot be owned or lost or defined. The soul is the original witness, the silent presence behind every incarnation, every thought, every veil. When you are still, it speaks. When you listen, it answers. And what it whispers is this: you were never born, you simply arrived. So don't ask, when did I begin? Ask instead, what have I always been? That is where the journey starts. Not with learning, but with remembering. Not with finding something new, but with uncovering what was always there, hidden beneath your breath, beneath your fear, beneath your name. Eternity was never far, it was wearing your face the whole time. Birth is celebrated as the beginning, the grand entrance into life. But to the ancient soul, birth is not a beginning, it is a descent into density, a plunge into forgetfulness. You didn't arrive empty, you arrived veiled. The cries of a newborn are not just for air, they are for memory, slipping away like smoke between dimensions. Your soul didn't start in the womb, it stepped through it, crossing from formlessness into form. And in that crossing, you agreed to forget. The veil of forgetting is not punishment. It is part of the sacred agreement. The soul, in order to fully enter the human experience, must lay down its knowing. Imagine trying to play a game while knowing every move, every ending, every rule. There would be no discovery, no joy, no meaning. So you chose to forget, not to suffer, but to feel, to rediscover yourself from within the illusion. Children often arrive still dripping with the light of where they came from. They talk to invisible friends. They remember lives they've never lived. They see things adults have been taught not to see. But slowly the veil thickens. Language replaces intuition. Conditioning replaces curiosity. The The world teaches them to forget what they still remember, and the soul recedes into the background, waiting patiently for the moment you'll return to it. In the ancient Gnostic view, entering a body was like falling into a dream. The world of matter, though beautiful, was seen as a dense echo of the higher realms. To be born here meant to enter a maze, with clues, with symbols, with patterns, but also with traps of illusion. And the greatest illusion of all, that you were born once, live once, and die once. The masters knew this is not your first breath. The Buddhists called it samsara, the wheel of rebirth, not as punishment but as repetition born of forgetfulness. You return again and again, not because you are broken but because you are unfinished. Not incomplete but still remembering. The soul circles like a spiral, revisiting lessons, shedding layers, realigning with truth. Birth is simply the soul re-entering the classroom under a different name. You've likely felt this in moments that made no rational sense. The way a place calls to you, the way you instantly trust a stranger, the déjà vu that hits like thunder. These are soul flashes, brief dissolvings of the veil, reminders that you are not bound to the story you've been told. You are deeper than your history, older than your age, wiser than your wounds. And so, the illusion of birth is only dangerous when you believe it's the start, when you confuse the costume for the actor, the stage for the self, but the soul never buys into the illusion fully. It watches, it waits, it leaves breadcrumbs in your dreams, in your aches, in your longing for something more. The veil may be thick, but it is not eternal, and once the soul starts to remember, it cannot forget again. So when you gaze into the mirror and wonder who you are, don't look for your reflection. Look for the one who is looking, the witness, the presence. That is the one who was never born. That is the one who knows. And that is the one you're here to remember. You were never created. You were never assembled, pieced together, or manufactured by a divine craftsman. That is a human metaphor, beautiful but limited. The ancient masters understood something far more profound. You were emanated. Like light from the sun, like fragrance from a flower, like a thought from the mind of God, you extended effortlessly and eternally from the source. In Hermetic teachings, all things flow from the One. The All, not by construction but by radiation. Just as a flame gives off heat, just as stars emit light, the divine gives rise to souls, not by making them but by being them. You are not separate from the source, you are its outbreath, its rhythm, its frequency manifest. What the sun is to its rays, the infinite is to you, and just as a ray cannot be severed from its origin, you have never been apart from God. The Gnostics called it pleromatick emanation, a sacred cascading of light, each level birthing the next. The soul in this cosmology is not a thing but a current, moving, pulsing, glowing with original essence. It is not something you own, it is something you are. You are not a human being with a soul, you are the soul, momentarily experiencing humanness. Think of it this way: a mirror catches the sunlight and reflects it on the wall. The shape it forms may change, but the light is still the sun's. The soul is that reflected light, pure and bright, shaped only by the mirror of this form. When the mirror breaks, when the body dies, the light doesn't die, it simply returns, unbent, undimmed, still radiant. The Upanishads whispered this truth thousands of years ago. The self is unborn, eternal, imperishable. It is not slain when the body is slain. This was not mysticism to them, it was foundational. The soul is not a spark given to you at birth, it is the eternal flame from which your very breath was kindled. It existed before the stars, it will remain after time is unspun. To see yourself as a creation is to see yourself as separate. It implies a beginning and with it an end. But to see yourself as emanation, as eternal radiation from the divine, is to remember that you are timeless, unbound, a wave that has never left the sea. The story of your life may have chapters, but the soul writing it never began, and if the soul was never born, it cannot die. If it was never constructed, it cannot collapse. If it was never owned, it cannot be lost. You do not need to search for your soul. You need only to uncover what has always been humming underneath the noise of your temporary name. So let this truth sink in, deeper than thought, deeper than language. You are not a reflection of the divine. You are the divine in reflection. And the longer you stare into the mirror, the more the mirror dissolves, and all that's left is light. You have been here before, not in body perhaps, but in essence, in rhythm, in knowing. Reincarnation is not a punishment nor a cycle to escape. It is the spiral dance of memory, a sacred return, a revisiting of soul contracts and cosmic seeds planted across time. You don't come back because you failed. You come back because your soul is still speaking, and the story isn't finished yet. The ancient sages didn't debate whether the soul returns. They knew it. The Buddha recalled hundreds of his past lives beneath the Bodhi tree. Plato spoke of the soul choosing its next life in the myth of Hindu scriptures describe the soul's journey through many forms, refining itself like gold in fire. And yet, this isn't about the ego-jumping bodies like costumes. It's about something far deeper, consciousness cycling through experience until it becomes wisdom. Imagine a pearl forming layer by layer. Each incarnation adds something: compassion, resilience, clarity, balance. Not all at once, not without pain, but always with purpose. The soul does not move through time. Time moves through the soul, and each lifetime is a brushstroke on an infinite canvas that stretches far beyond what your current eyes can see. We often ask, why am I here? But the better question is, what am I remembering? The lessons you're drawn to, the patterns you repeat, the fears you cannot explain. They are not random. They are echoes, residues, fragments of memory rising to the surface, not to haunt you, but to awaken you. The past does not chase you. It invites you to heal what was left unfinished. Karma, then, is not retribution. It is reflection, the law of correspondence at work across lifetimes. What you avoid becomes your curriculum. What you suppress becomes your mirror, until you finally see, not as punishment, but as precision. The universe does not waste energy, it recycles it, and your soul is that sacred current spiraling not in circles, but upward, always toward greater awareness. You may have stood in ancient temples, you may have spoken in forgotten languages, you may have loved and lost the same souls across multiple lives. This is why some people feel instantly familiar, why some fears feel ancient, why some truths hit you like memories instead of revelations, because they are memories rising not from the mind but from the soul's deep archive. And yet you are not trapped in this cycle, you are being refined by it. Every act of awareness breaks the pattern. Every choice made in consciousness instead of compulsion elevates the spiral. And there comes a point, quiet and profound, when the soul no longer returns from need, but from service, from compassion, to help others remember what it has already reclaimed. So when you look into your life and ask why you are drawn to certain wounds, certain dreams, certain places, listen, not with your ears, but with your soul. You've been here before, but this time you are awakening. This time you are not just living, you are remembering. We tend to think of the womb as the beginning, the first sacred space, the origin of life. But to the ancient initiates, the womb was not the origin. It was a passage, a veil, a matrix through which the soul descended, crossing from the formless to the formed. It was not the source of life, but the soft gate that delivered the soul into its chosen costume. And in that moment, you did not begin. You entered. The ancients called this moment the second veil. The first veil is spiritual amnesia, the forgetting of your divine origin. The second is physical birth, the immersion into density, sensation, identity. The Gnostics taught that when the soul falls into matter, it enters the matrix, a web of illusion, sensation, time, and name. The womb is the first chamber of this matrix, beautiful, nurturing, but not the beginning. You were not assigned your life, you chose it. Chose your body, your parents, your bloodline, your location in time, not as punishment but as alignment. You selected the conditions most fertile for your evolution. You are not a victim of biology. You are an ancient being who crossed a dimensional threshold, who curled your infinite light into the smallest vessel imaginable, so that you could reawaken from within it. Modern science tells us the fetus is shaped by DNA, chemicals, and genes, but the sages knew it is also shaped by intention, by karma, by soul memory. The womb is a classroom, a temple, a tuning chamber. It is where the soul begins to wear the skin of this world, but your true essence was never inside it. It hovered just beyond, whispering through each pulse. Soon. Birth was your descent into the dream, your entrance into the realm of separation. And from the moment you arrived, the world began its work of convincing you that you were only this body, that you had started here, that you must search outside yourself to be complete. But something in you, quiet, steady, always knew this wasn't true. That knowing is what brought you here, that ancient whisper, the feeling that you are more than this body, this gender, this family name. You were not born broken, you were not born blind, you were born into forgetting so that the act of remembering could be your awakening, so that what was once unconscious could become conscious, so that you could earn your truth by reclaiming it moment by moment. The womb did not create you, it received you. You were already whole before you entered it. And when you pass from this life, you will leave through another veil, one just as soft, just as luminous, and you will see it clearly. Your so-called beginning was just a doorway, a beautiful illusion, a necessary forgetting, so that the truth would mean something when you finally remembered. Time feels so real. It marches forward, relentless. We age, we decay. We build memories and watch them fade. But what if time was not the master? What if it was the illusion? What if the ticking clock, the growing wrinkles, the deadlines and calendars were all part of a dream, and the soul was the one dreaming it? The ancient masters whispered a truth modern minds still fear to grasp. Time is not linear. It is not a straight line from birth to death. It is a spiral, a mirror, a current of perception, not a structure of reality. The soul exists outside of time. It sees your lives not in a row, but like stars in a constellation, separate yet connected, not past and future, but all now. In Hermetic thought, time is a lower law, a construct of the physical realm. Above it exists the realm of eternal now, where everything simply is. The Buddhists call it the timeless moment. The Gnostics called it aeonic fullness. In modern terms, you might call it presence, but whatever name you give it, it is not something you reach. It is something you return to because your soul has never left it. Einstein once said, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. He wasn't speaking poetically, he was speaking scientifically. And yet the mystics knew it long before physics caught up. They knew that time was a lens and the soul was the light passing through it, bending into the forms of experience. This is why you feel drawn to certain eras, why dreams sometimes carry information you couldn't possibly know, why healing the past feels like liberation in the present. Because in the soul's field, everything is happening at once. Reincarnation is not linear progression. It is the soul weaving lessons from many timelines into one integrated truth. You don't have a past life the way you think. You have parallel expressions of consciousness. Each incarnation, each identity is a facet of the one gem you truly are. And your current life is the one you've chosen to awaken within, the one through which you reclaim the timeless nature of what you've always been. The tragedy is not that time moves. It's that we forget we are not bound by it. You are not aging, you are unfolding, you are not running out of time, you are peeling back the layers of it. And when you enter stillness, true stillness, you begin to feel it, the eternal silence beneath the ticking, the timeless watcher behind the moving hands of the clock. So let go of the story that says you're running out of time. You are the dreamer, not the dream. You are the light, not the flickering shadow it casts. The soul doesn't fear time because it is not inside time. It uses it, plays with it, dances through it. And when this dream dissolves, you will remember you never moved at all. You were always here. You've been taught to fear death, to see it as a wall, a full stop, the void at the end of all things. But the ancient masters looked at death with different eyes. They didn't fear it. They didn't resist it because they remembered. Death is not an ending. It is a return, a homecoming, a breath out after a long, contracted inhale through the veil of incarnation. What dies is not you. What dies is the name, the mask, the costume, the persona carefully woven from memories and wounds, dreams and roles. When the breath leaves the body, what remains is not nothingness, but everything. The soul does not go anywhere. It simply re-expands, like a flame released from its lantern, like a drop returning to the ocean without ever forgetting it was water all along. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes death not as punishment or finality, but as a passage through layers of light and reflection, an unveiling. The Egyptian text called it the duat, the realm of transformation. The Gnostics saw it as the lifting of the final veil, revealing the archons, the memories, and ultimately the light beyond illusion. None of these traditions feared death. They prepared for it, not as an escape, but as a sacred reunion. Think about the stories you've heard, people who came back from the brink of death. What do they say? I saw the light. I felt peace. I was still me, but more. These are not hallucinations. They are memories, flashes of the soul's real home, the place it never truly left, only veiled from view. Death is not disconnection. It is reconnection. And yet most live as if death is the worst thing that could happen. But the real tragedy is not dying. It's never living, never remembering who you are while in the body, never waking up from the trance of fear and attachment. The soul does not fear death. It fears forgetting, because forgetting is what keeps the wheel spinning, the reincarnational spiral looping. Death is simply a mirror that shows you what you made of your time. When you die, you don't face a judge. You face yourself, your truth, your echoes, the energy you gave and withheld, the light you remembered or ignored, and then based on what the soul needs next, not what the ego wants, you return. Or you rise, or you dissolve into the greater body of light from which you came. Death isn't a trapdoor, it's a choice point, a gateway. The mystics understood this and lived accordingly. They did not waste time. They did not cling to possessions, titles, or stories. They lived like eternal beings wearing temporary robes because that's what they were. That's what you are. And when the robe drops, the light remains. The soul is not extinguished. It simply steps through another door. So let death soften you, not terrify you. Let it remind you that your time here is precious, not because it ends, but because it is sacred. And sacred things are never wasted. When your final breath comes, it won't be the end of your story. It will be a comma in a sentence that stretches beyond time, written by a soul that was never born and can never die. We speak of the soul as if it's a possession. My soul, we say, as if it were a thing we carry in our chest, hidden somewhere behind our ribs. But this too is a misunderstanding, a residue of ego wrapped in spiritual language. The truth is far more expansive. You are not a soul. You are the soul, not a fragment, but a full emanation of the One. Not a drop separated from the ocean, but the ocean itself in conscious form. There is only one soul, one divine awareness expressing itself through infinite faces. The illusion of separation makes it feel like we are many, but just as a wave appears distinct from the sea, only to merge again, we are individual only in experience, not in truth. The soul is singular, eternal, boundless, and you are not a version of it. You are it right now, remembering itself through the mirror of your life. The Hermetic masters understood this. They didn't see God and man as separate, they saw them as reflections. That which is above is like that which is below, not in similarity but in substance, not in metaphor but in essence. You are not like the divine. You are made of the same light, the same fire, the same stillness, the same will. This is why mystics across traditions speak of ego death, because to access this truth, the personality must soften, the I must fall away, so the am can rise. The sense of a separate self dissolves into the field of awareness from which it came. It's not annihilation, it's liberation. When the identity drops, you don't lose yourself. You become yourself, the one that was never confined to a name. The Upanishads say the self is one. unchanging, eternal. It does not die when the body dies. And the self they speak of is not your soul, it is the soul, the core of all beings, the eye behind all eyes, the one flame shining through many candles. It's why you feel love, connection, empathy, because at the deepest level there is no other, just the one meeting itself in infinite reflections. This is the reason we suffer when we harm others, why cruelty feels wrong, why connection feels holy, because the soul cannot be divided. When you hurt another, you are wounding yourself. When you lift another, you rise with them. The soul knows no separation. Only the ego does. And the ego is a temporary costume worn by something far more ancient. You are not becoming divine. You are remembering that you already are. You do not need to reach the light. You are made of it. Every time you look outside for God, you delay the encounter. But when you turn inward, into the silence beneath thought, you find a doorway that leads to the one soul, and it opens in every direction. So let this be the moment you drop the illusion that you are just a person with a soul. You are the soul, wearing personhood like a robe for a brief season, but even now, beneath the thoughts, the roles, the breath, you remain. Still, aware, whole, the soul unbroken, unbound, eternal, and fully alive. If the soul is eternal, if death is an illusion, if time is a dream, then why don't we live like it? Why has the world forgotten what once was sacred? The answer is unsettling but necessary. The truth was hidden, not by accident but by design. Over centuries, layer by layer, the world was veiled, until you were convinced you were only flesh, until you forgot that you were never born. The ancient masters left the clues, in stone, in symbol, in whispered scrolls and cryptic verses. They knew the truth would be buried under empire, dogma, and fear. They foresaw how religion would replace revelation with control, how institutions would sever the soul from the source and sell it back piece by piece. Because when you forget your eternity, you become dependent, fearful, easily ruled. It wasn't just forgotten, it was erased. Sacred texts altered, teachers silenced, truths distorted. You were taught you needed saving, not remembering, that you were born wrong, that your soul could be lost or judged. But none of that is true. The soul cannot be broken, it can only be buried beneath stories, systems, shame. The forgetting wasn't just spiritual, it was systemic. But forgetting is not forever. The soul stores everything like a seed. Beneath ice it waits, whole, undiminished, until the right moment, until the dream becomes too small, until the body remembers something the mind cannot explain. And that's where you are now. That's why you're here. This moment is not random. It is a soul flash, a ripple in the illusion, a fragment of truth calling itself back together. Have you noticed the synchronicities? The way certain phrases hit like memories? The hunger for something deeper than what the world is offering? That's not curiosity, that's remembrance. The veil is thinning, not just for you, but for many. Across the planet, souls are stirring. The matrix is showing its cracks, and light is leaking through. And it isn't always beautiful. Awakening can feel like breaking. It often comes disguised as heartbreak, loss, confusion. Because before you remember who you are, you must let go of who you are not. That's what makes it hard. That's what makes it real. The soul doesn't come back gently. It comes like a flood that cannot be denied. But once it begins, once you remember even a fragment of your true nature, something irreversible happens. The world can never fully fool you again. You start to see the illusion for what it is, a stage, a school, a sacred maze built for remembering. And in that seeing, you step outside the wheel, you move differently, speak differently, live like the eternal presence you are. So let the old stories fall, let the false beginnings collapse, let the idea that you were born broken melt in the heat of this truth. You were never lost, only hidden, and now you are being found, not by someone else, but by the soul inside you that never forgot. There is a knowing inside you that can't be shaken, a feeling that there is more to life than this story, more to you than this name, more to truth than the world dares to tell. That knowing is your soul. It doesn't speak in words, it speaks in resonance, in longing, in goosebumps and dreams and the quiet pull towards something sacred. And now you remember, you were never born, you simply arrived. This journey was never about becoming something, it was about uncovering what you already are. You don't need to chase enlightenment, you are what enlightenment reveals. You don't need to earn your worth, you are worth, clothed in breath and bone. You don't need to find your soul, you are the soul, remembering itself through the theater of this life. Now the illusion begins to fade. You start to see death not as a thief but a doorway, time not as your master but your servant. You feel the presence behind your thoughts, the witness behind the scenes. That presence has always been there, watching, waiting, whispering, and now it's rising. Not as an idea, but as your true identity. So the question is no longer, who am I? You know now. You are the timeless, the uncreated, the emanation of the one light in countless forms. The question becomes, how will you live now that you remember? Will you keep playing small, pretending to be temporary? Will you bury your light beneath fear and repetition? Or will you walk like someone who knows they are stardust and silence, power and presence, embodied eternity in human form? This isn't philosophy, it's a way of being, a vibration, a remembering that must become a movement in how you live, how you speak, how you love. Live like your breath is a prayer, like your choices ripple through time, like everyone you meet is another face of the same soul, looking back at you. Live not as someone waiting to die, but as someone who was never born, who simply stepped into form to remember the formless and to bring that light into the world. The soul doesn't awaken to escape this world, it awakens to illuminate it, to show others what they are through the mirror of your being. You become a living memory of eternity, a walking reflection of the divine in motion. Not because you have all the answers, but because you've remembered the most important one. You are already what you seek, so let this be the turning point. Let this be the breath where remembering becomes embodiment, where awareness becomes action, where the truth in your heart becomes the rhythm of your life. And if this message stirred something ancient inside you, something true, then don't let it fade. Hold it, live it, share it, subscribe to Path to Nirvana if your soul is awakening to the eternal. Because you didn't just watch this video, you remembered it.